The chimpanzees often seemed miserable in the rain. They looked cold, and they shivered. Since they were clever enough to use tools, I was surprised that they had not learned to make shelters. Many of them got coughs and colds. Often, during heavy rain, they seemed irritable and bad-tempered. Once, as I walked through thick forest in a downpour, I suddenly saw a chimp hunched in front of me. Quickly, I stopped. Then I heard a sound from above. I looked up, and there was a big chimp there, too. When he saw me, he gave a loud, clear wailing "rah," a spine-chilling call that is used to threaten a dangerous animal. To my right, I saw a large black hand shaking a branch and bright eyes glaring threateningly through the foliage. Then came another savage "rah" from behind. Up above, the big male began to sway the vegetation. I was surrounded. I crouched down, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. Suddenly a chimp charged straight toward me. His hair bristled with rage. At the last minute, he swerved and ran off. I stayed still. 2 more chimps charged nearby. Then suddenly, I realized I was alone again. All the chimps had gone. Only then did I realize how frightened I had been. When I stood up, my legs were trembling. Male chimps, although they are only 4 feet tall when upright, are at least 3 times stronger than a grown man. And I weighed only about 90 pounds. I had become very thin with so much climbing in the mountains and only 1 meal a day. That incident took place soon after the chimps had lost their initial terror of me, but before they had learned to accept me calmly as part of their forest world. If David Graybeard had been among them, they probably would not have behaved like that, I thought. After my long days in the forests, I looked forward to supper. Dominic always had it ready for me when I got back in the evenings. Once a month, he went into Kagoma with Hassan. They came back with new supplies, including fresh vegetables and fruit and eggs. And they brought my mail. That was something I really looked forward to. After supper, I would get out the little notebook in which I had scribbled everything I had seen while watching the chimps during the day. I would settle down to write it all legibly into my journal. It was very important to do that every evening, while it was all fresh in my mind. Even on days when I climbed back to sleep near the chimps, I always wrote up my journal first. Gradually, as the weeks went by, I began to recognize more and more chimpanzees as individuals. Some, like Goliath, William, and Old Flo, I got to know well, because David Graybeard sometimes brought them with him when he visited camp. I always had a supply of bananas ready in case the chimps arrived. Once you have been close to chimps for a while, they are as easy to tell apart as your classmates. Their faces look different, and they have different characters. David Graybeard, for example, was a calm chimp who liked to keep out of trouble. But he was also very determined to get his own way. If he arrived in camp and couldn't find any bananas, he would walk into my tent and search. Afterward, all was chaos. It looked as though some burglar had raided the place. Goliath had a much more excitable, impetuous temperament. William, with his long-shaped face, was shy and timid. Old Flo was easy to identify. She had a bulbous nose and ragged ears. She came to camp with her infant daughter, whom I named Fifi, and her juvenile son, Fegan. Sometimes adolescent Fabian came too. It was from Flo that I first learned that in the wild, female chimps have only 1 baby every 5 or 6 years. The older offspring, even after they have become independent, still spend a lot of time with their mothers, and all the different family members help one another. Flo also taught me that female chimps do not have just one mate. One day she came to my camp with a pink swelling on her rump. This was a sign that she was ready for mating. She was followed by a long line of suitors. Many of them had never visited my camp before, and they were scared. But they were so attracted to Flo that they overcame their fear in order to keep close to her. She allowed them all to mate with her at different times.